We will start our session with a closer look at Agristo's move to SAP S/4HANA. And to inform that view, I'm very glad to introduce to you Martijn Mennen, the Chief Information Officer at Agristo. A warm welcome, Martijn.
Thank you very much.
Martijn, we've just heard that Agristo is a rapidly changing and a fast-growing company with steep ambitions. Can you explain for us how that helped and maybe even pushed you in this digital journey?
Yeah, well, at Agristo, we transform potatoes into fries. We operate in a very competitive and a global market with relatively low margins and extremely high volumes. Just to give you an idea, we process roughly 710 Olympic-sized swimming pools filled to the brim with potatoes into a little over 800,000 tons of end product. We ship to over 120 countries, so all over the world. And the key to making this work is innovation. Innovation in the sense that we have to update operations. We have to innovate on the level of processes, of physical processes. Also, to give you an example here, we have the largest frying oven in the world. It can hold up to 8 tons, 8,000 kilograms of product at one time. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, cold stores in the world. It can hold up to 100,000 pallets of deep frozen fries. So we do all sorts of amazing, innovative things on the physical process side, on the physical side of the company, but we felt that we were missing out on the administrative business process part, on the administrative business process side. This is why we thought that S/4HANA shouldn't just be an upgrade, but should really be seen as an innovative digitization process.
Yes, well, and you say innovation is key, and indeed we hear a lot about innovation as if it was some magical textbook solution which is off the shelf available. Of course, in real life it's different, it's more challenging, I would say. So how did you actually start your digital journey?
Well, you could say that we started our journey approximately 2.5 years ago with the idea of upgrading our existing ERP environment, which is SAP ECC, to S/4HANA. But we quickly decided to take a more holistic approach and to go for a principle of sustainable innovation, which also applied to our operations and to improvements to our physical process. So as a CIO, I had set out 3 goals. Not specifically for this S4 journey, S/4HANA journey, but more in the sense of personal goals. First and foremost, increase user experience. And with that, I mean, or let me just give you a small example. If you are familiar with the SAP GUI, the classical SAP GUI screen, I'm sure you can agree it's not the most intuitive user interface. Secondly, I wanted to increase the efficiency in which business processes could be executed. And thirdly, I wanted to speed up the time to market of the development of our IT applications and portals and so on.
So tell me, Martijn, how do these 3 very specific goals fit into the wider digital ambitions at Agristo?
Well, for example, if we take a look at the last one, so it's increasing the speed, increasing the speed or the time to market for our applications. We had already purchased Mendix as a low-code rapid application development platform, and we use it as a communication platform in the form of a grower portal for our growers. So our growers basically grow potatoes for us. They are our most important suppliers. And we give them access not only to the quantitative data of the potatoes that they deliver to us, but also to qualitative data. So we give them access to data and to measurements that we do in operations in order for them to get more insights into their crops. With regards to the first and the second one, so the first one being user experience and the second one being business process, I was convinced that S/4HANA had major improvements compared to the existing SAP ECC installation that we had.
Did you also brand this digital transformation journey?
Well, actually, as Lieven already mentioned in his introduction, the S/4HANA upgrade project or the digitization project is called NICE, which has a nice ring to it. It stands for new and improved SAP, and it kind of gives the atmosphere in which we are executing this project actually within our company.
It's a nice name indeed, and it gives the spirit also in the company, so I think it's a great start. But how did you then continue your journey to S/4HANA migration?
Well, the next step basically was we wanted to do two things. On the one hand, we wanted to discover new functionality that was available within S/4HANA and might be interesting in our context, in the context of a producer of fries. But on the other hand, we wanted to also make an inventory of our existing business processes so that we could see where the wheels were starting to grind, where it became difficult to follow, where processes were scattered around a department or around multiple departments. And actually, in that sense, we got excellent help from Delaware in the form of a framework that they had lying off the shelf that we could pick out. And it's basically entailed 4 types of workshops, or content tracks, if you will. And the first one was Inspire. Inspire basically allowed the people to dream again about their job, dream about business processes. And I'll give you one really good example. In finance, every month it's a same struggle, month closing. So why not change from month closing to a continuous closing process? Just as an example. The second wave of workshops were Discover. So the new processes or updated processes, improved processes, how do they function in an S/4HANA context? The third wave, Capture. There we turn the roles around, and there the Delaware experts, the Delaware functional and business consultants, listen to the Agristo experts, who then explain to them how our existing processes came together, basically our way of working. Then the fourth wave was actually a summary or a summarization of the previous 3. Orient. And in this track, we basically decided, okay, this is a process that we're going to tackle. This is a process that we're going to improve. This is a process that we're going to leave alone. And this is the functionality that we're going to use for it.
So that sounds like a lot of work, a lot of workshops that you've performed?
We held about 40 workshops in the course of 3 months. We included all plants, we included all departments up to the level of shift leader, basically, to really make people part of the change.
So you basically mobilized the entire company, you organized some 40 workshops in 3 months.
Yes,
sounds like an awful lot of work. So can you share already some of the first results of all this hard labor?
Yeah, we did 2 things actually. Well, we did more, obviously, but the 2 major things that came out, obviously, the first one is a major matrix that contained all of our business processes mapped against existing functionality, not yet existing functionality, or not yet available functionality, and possible new functionality. And on the other hand, a heat map, and I think I have an example with me. And basically, it shows you a risk assessment, or it gives a risk assessment of a change that we were going to implement. For example, low risk, low value, high risk, high value, and map that against or in a matrix. And obviously, this was a perfect starting point for us because it showed us what we should focus on.
It's kind of a visual that allows you to identify your hot potatoes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the things you focus on from the start are the high value and low risk, and the high risk and high value you tend to start a discussion with business if it's all feasible. So that was one thing that we accomplished with this focus. And then the next thing, or the other thing that we also accomplished with this, was we got perfect business buy-in because actually business made this matrix themselves.
Yeah, so they own it from the start.
They owned it, yes.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned user experience as one of your key missions as a CIO. Did you also incorporate that into your S/4HANA migration
Absolutely,
journey?
absolutely. So after the workshops, we went into 2 tracks. The first track, classic functional improvements. Which functionality are we going to use? Which one are we going to postpone and do next year? And then the second track was, or is the Fiori track. Fiori is the new user interface of SAP. Basically, what we asked each department is to design their own perfect virtual workspace. I'll give you a practical example of that. Customer service, so the people who come in contact with customers at our company the most, they typically, when they came in the office, they logged into SAP and they had to execute about 5, 10 or 15 transactions before they had a general idea of what was going to be on their plate on that day or in that week. We redesigned, or actually they designed, a perfect starting page, a home page, that contains an overview, for example, and I think I have an example with me here, that gives an overview of new orders, of which orders are, which orders need action because of, for example, a production scheduling issue, basically invoices nearing late payments, etc. So basically, for me, this is a great example how something as easy as a new user interface can really push vital information to our customer service department and therefore increase customer service and also basically give a better customer experience.
Yeah, well, indeed, it's a very tangible but also convincing example, I think, of improving customer experience, indeed. Now, we haven't talked much about your second goal, increasing efficiency in handling business processes. Would you care to elaborate on that topic?
Yeah, actually, thanks to our workshops, from which we got quite some details. It was well documented. And then we saw in certain processes, or actually in quite some processes, there was still some repetitive, non-value adding, tedious tasks. This was actually ideal for RPA. RPA is a technique, it's called Robotics Process Automation. And what it does is basically you have a virtual robot for you available behind your keyboard to execute tasks, available 24/7. And an example here that I can mention is, for example, the creation of our growers, master data-wise. It takes about 15 steps in our current process, ranging from creating address data to validating VAT details to even creating a user for a grower portal. And it took or takes someone from the agricultural department about 1 hour, 1.5, sometimes maybe 2 hours before this whole package is complete. We aim to do it with RPA in less than a minute.
Okay.
So in total, we have about 40 scenarios identified. We want to implement 4 by the end of this year. Actually, 2 are already live. And for me, this is actually perfect proof that sometimes you have to just stop what you're doing, have a step back, and have a look and dare to ask a critical question. And obviously, it helps if you have a partner sitting next to you that can help you and guide you in this process, which Delaware did perfectly in this case.
Well, I tend to agree. I'm also sure that Delaware is the perfect partner to challenge your ideas, but also to support you on your journey.
Absolutely.
You talked about taking one step back. I'd like to do that as well, because it sounds to me like you have a lot of moving parts here. We're talking about both functional and technical. As for HANA migration, you have the Fiori integration, you have the RPA implementation, and even the Mendix low-code platform. So I'm trying to develop a helicopter view here. Could you help me in understanding how these different systems and platforms, how they all interconnect in the Agristo IT landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, I would say that this is our holy trinity. We use S/4HANA with Fiori to cover, enable, support our primary or our core administrative business processes. And the general or the main principle here is we keep the core clean. So we do not do custom developments in this environment unless it is absolutely vital for business that something is available in the core ERP. Side by side to this is Mendix as a low-code application development platform, and it allows us to rapidly deploy new applications without touching our ERP core. My great dream would be to replace all major Excels, complicated Excels, with macros and access databases that hover around everywhere in the company with a solid built application on a stable database environment. And then thirdly, our third pillar of our holy trinity, I would say, is RPA. We use Blue Prism as a tool, and we use this to cut out non-value adding, tedious, repetitive tasks, and to further optimize business processes where S/4HANA is unable to do so in a standard way.
Yeah. Well, I think you just voiced the aspiration of a lot of our people at home as well now in trying to make those difficult and those endless spreadsheets and Excel files disappear. Now, you're talking about a fairly challenging IT endeavor here with a solid scope for both migration and integration of different platforms. it kind of sounds to me like the type of IT projects that enjoy a reputation for being notoriously late and tremendously expensive. So are you at liberty, Martijn, to disclose your current status of implementation?
Yes, yes, of course. I can proudly say that as for HANA, together with Fiori, we are completely on track. We are also on budget, also thanks to the great people of Delaware. We're ready to go live on December 28th. Our quality environment is already migrated and we are now in the middle of end-user trainings. With regards to RPA, as I mentioned, we have 40 flows identified. Already 2 are live. We aim to do another 2 more until the end of the year, and then take on another 20 to 25 next year, depending on the complexity, of course. Mendix, as a low-code platform, is also up and running. I explained to you the Grower Portal, which is already live. We also have a business-critical quality app up and running, which basically allows business to determine at the end of the production line what the product is actually fit for which customer or for which market. We are now creating a roadmap together with business because the requests for new applications come in a little faster than we can process them at this point.
Okay, so you're almost a victim of your own success. Sounds like you have a lot of on your plate, so I'm delighted to hear, Martijn, that your digital journey, although challenging, is progressing so smoothly. Now, still, I can imagine that you must have encountered some bumps in the road along the way, so maybe to wrap up our discussion, would you be able to share some lessons learned or your return on experience to inspire our audience here today?
Absolutely, I would gladly like to share some key takeaways. First and foremost, I would say to everyone, avoid making S4 a technical or S4 migrations a technical project. There's way too much business value in the developments that SAP did in the form of Fiori, of the new user interface, in the form of KPIs where the system is actually able to push information towards the user instead of the user having to pull information from the system. Basically, I would say the moral is put the people and the process in the center of your project and not the technology. The technology will follow. Secondly, dare to look inside. Really dare to ask critical questions about your process. The thing I asked or I mentioned, stop, take a step back. And obviously, it helps if you have a partner that can do that side by side with you. Thirdly, those are basically 2. Set up a decent communication house on the one hand, and also do not underestimate the importance of change management. So set up a communication house. With that, I mean, make a decent inventory of what you want to communicate at what point of time and to whom and in what way. Interlink with that, change management. I think it's an open door for most people. Still, do not underestimate that if you perceive that a change might be small, you might really impact someone on a day-to-day basis. So get a change manager on board, really assign someone to the project or make someone responsible for this change management. Last but certainly not least, go back to basics. Really ask yourself if a development that you did in the past in your existing system is still required to be done or is still required in your new ERP system. And if it's not, if you have to come to the conclusion that basically it's not, go on a search for an application, a platform in which it's better suited. Yeah. So for us, as for HANA combined with Mendix and RPA is a perfect match, but obviously everyone can and should do this journey on their own.
Exactly. I think everyone has to embark on this journey on himself or herself. So thanks a lot for sharing these insights, Martijn. That's very helpful. My takeaway in this is that the potato-holics at Agristo have implemented an application landscape based on 3 pillars. So there's S4HANA with Fiori to support and enable the core business processes. There's Mendix for rapid custom application deployment, and then RPA to get rid of those tedious, the time-consuming, and the non-value-added tasks. So that gives you a strong setup that enables you to deliver user-friendly end-to-end customer solutions, but at the same time allows you to anticipate to future improvements and innovations. That already brings us to the end of the first session. So I'd like to thank you, Martijn, for your inspiring Agristo testimonial.
You're very welcome.